are now listening to the Rapport Podcast Network.
Hello, Sooner fans, and welcome in to another episode of Sooner Spotlight. Very happy to have a special guest on me. I got JP over with the JP and Trav Show live every Wednesday. JP, how we doing, man?
I'm good. I'm doing good. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. Hanging in there, trying to get through, kind of a confusing week, I think, and I think we're seeing a lot of it. Obviously, that's why you and I wanted to hop on and kind of talk about this. Kind of going back to the Houston game. I think a lot of Oklahoma fans really hanging on to that and feeling really poorly about the team after seeing what happened. No doubt a sloppy game, right? Definitely a sloppy game, a lot of sloppiness really on both sides of the ball. You can nitpick on both sides, but I want to start off and put all the negative things aside real quick. What did you see from that game on Saturday against Houston? What did you see that was positive that we can pull away from Houston?
Yeah, I think that, and sorry, it seems like my camera's having a few issues here, so let me get set up here. But I think definitely it seems like people are gravitating towards like we're just a defensive team and nothing else now, which I don't think is ultimately what we're going to be. I know that it's kind of a freaky situation because of what the last game was. But when's the last time we had a defense like this?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm right there with you.
That's where I think there's some frustration for me because I also saw some people saying year three preventables, it shouldn't be happening, and I hear a piece of that of just like, obviously Levy left, and maybe it wasn't always the case that maybe Levy was expected to be there in year three into the SEC, but he wasn't, and so that's a change you have to factor in. Obviously, Caden Green leaving, like that's something that you have to factor in and lose on. So I know we'll get to more of the offensive pieces later, so I don't want to dive too far into that. But like our defense is legit, and years we might lose the game. But we don't because we're in year three of a Brent Venables defense, and it's showing up, right? Yeah. So that's kind of obviously the biggest positive I took from the game. There were not a lot of positives offensively, but I think that Taylor Tatum, Jake Roberts are probably in my opinion the two brighter spots. I know Taylor only got the one carry. He made some mistakes in pass pro, but he clearly looks like the more explosive back of the three at this point. And Jake Roberts obviously had the two biggest catches of the game. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, you're right. And we look over at the defense, that is the bright spot. And one thing that I think, Oklahoma fans aren't paying attention to is that's what we were focused on leading into the season. This is going to be a defensive-led team. And also another thing that you brought up, we don't have the same offensive coordinator. It is new, and it's also kind of new for Seth Luttrell to try to, get back into the swing of things here too. So definitely something, kind of looking at it, the offense is going to have their hiccups. And with a young quarterback, that's another thing I think, we're not giving enough grace to a guy that is young. And personally, I didn't think Jackson Arnold had that bad of a game. And so I want to kind of talk about that real quick, just about the buzz around Jackson Arnold, because obviously a quarterback has a subpar game to a bad game, and all of a sudden Oklahoma fans are going to overreact, right? So, we're seeing a lot of replace Jackson Arnold. What do you have to say for fans that are kind of throwing in that kind of a hype into that kind of a message into the message boards?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this on Twitter, man. Like, I think it's crazy to say that. Like, at this very moment, it's crazy. If it's this exact same as what Saturday was, next week, then okay, we start to have conversations about what does it look like to get Hawk some snaps? I can maybe understand that at that point if it's that bad again. And I don't think, like you said, it wasn't all bad, but he missed a lot, right? And he would admit to that. He missed a lot of throws. He looked shaky in the pocket. His confidence looked shaken. And there were, I think if you watch the game, there were a lot of things that just, some of it I really attribute to bad luck. Others I attribute to just poor execution. And so whether it's, and honestly, man, it's a lot of what, people were complaining about the last few years with our offense, with Levy, even though clearly it was, a lot better than this offense has been through the first 2 weeks. It seems like, man, when something isn't perfect, it derails everything. And that seemed to be what was going on all the time, like whether it was the missed throws by Jackson, whether it was blown assignments by the offensive line or the running backs in pass protection, which actually wasn't that much. The offensive line didn't do that bad pass protecting.
Yeah, I thought they looked a little bit better.
Yes. Run blocking, though, not very good. And even when it was good, sometimes the backs didn't see it well either, or weren't able to break tackles. It's just kind of a smorgasbord of things that are kind of going on. All that to say, Jackson is in his third game. Okay, I know he got some spot time last year in a few games in 2022. It still does not equate for a full season of like you're the guy, right? If you're starting and you lost 5 offensive linemen, your best offensive lineman returning goes to Missouri. You lost and have lost 3 of your top targets, right, at this very moment. Andrell wasn't out there, obviously. Jaden tore his ACL. Jalil, unfortunately, broke his foot. Nick hasn't been out there, right? Like, there's a lot, and the running game isn't going at all. Like, the running game has not been going at all. So that's hard on a young quarterback. And it's frustrating for people to be like, well, he should just be out there doing all this. Look at Nico. Look at Dylan. And I'll be honest, I had mentioned that, and I'm mentioning that just to say we can't keep him on a short leash forever.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are guys that are as young as him that are doing, better. However, a lot of those guys are in better situations, right? Yeah. And so it's for me, it's a situation where we have to look at it, and you can't just be black and white, which I think is what some Sooners fans have done. It's like, this is what we expect out of the Sooner quarterback, and if we don't get it, back up. Put him in. We got to see something different. It clearly hasn't worked. It's not going to work. It'll never. It's almost like they ruminate on it, and they go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Like in talking to some fans, it was like, well, this is just how it's going to be. I know it. I've seen it. Once it's like this, it's always like this, and I don't subscribe to that. Yeah. I think things change week to week all the time. Right? We've seen, I mean, if anybody remembers, I'm sure you do, in 2015, Lincoln's first year, the offense was not really getting off the ground the first couple of weeks. I'm not saying it was as rough, but there were moments where it was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, they're like, what's happening? Like, why does it seem to be like this? And then it got off the ground and it got going. I think people are truly just freaking out about the SEC schedule and what we have coming up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think that's where people are.
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. I think that is where people are at, and I think that's ultimately. I mean, I feel that. I feel that. I'm worried about it because you're not blowing a Houston out like you should, and that is worrisome from an Oklahoma. As an Oklahoma fan from our standpoint. That's definitely a really good one to bring up. And you brought up Baker Mayfield. I can remember Baker. I can even remember Jalen. For times when they had a game that just wasn't up to standards, and hey, maybe we should think about the backup quarterback. And, it's easy to just jump onto that, but let's hold back. And I'm not comparing Jackson to them, and I want the rest of Oklahoma fans to realize we shouldn't. Right? He's a young guy. He's going to make mistakes, and when you go back and look at the tape, so if we were to take what he's done so far this season, if he were to keep on par with this. I threw this out there, I think, on social media even. Like, all right, so if Jackson Arnold was to stay on par with what he's done in these first 2 games, he would end the season with 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and you're telling me that's a bad average to have right now. I understand that's week 1 you had 4 touchdowns and you didn't throw any interceptions. I get that. But, one thing I think looking back at the interception that Jackson threw, I blame that almost just as much on Dion, man. I really do, because Dion didn't really go for that ball like he should have. And that's ultimately something you've got to place some blame on a wide receiver. That's things that I think a lot of fans, if you don't really know how to look for those kinds of things, or maybe you don't know what certain assignments are given out, that's kind of some of the things that I think ultimately fans kind of throw out the window and forget about for sure.
Yeah, no, and to your point, I don't want to belabor the point here, but you're absolutely right. It wasn't. I don't think it was as bad as what people think. I mean, we did not score the entire second half. That was bad. Don't get me wrong. Hear me when I say that. But people are acting like he can't even get the ball down the field. Like he's not a good passer anymore. And I think it's crazy to say. Like he didn't make good passes in the game. Like there was nothing at all, even remotely positive that he did. It just was not consistent, which again, I understand. Yeah. Right. As Seth said in his press conference, you have to be consistent to be a good offense, right? Yeah. You can't just have flashes. And I agree with that. We can't just have flashes, and we got to find ways to be consistent, and we got to find ways to do it quick. You got a good Tulane team coming in here, and then you got a Tennessee team who everybody thought maybe they're on par with Oklahoma, like they're that 10 to 12 range. Well, they may be top 5 by the time they get here.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a whole nother conversation. So it's like, what are we going to do? And I think that's what has people freaking out. I was just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? And I'm not saying that all these fans have never coached. And I would be harder on the ones who have. But I feel like if you coached at a high level, it's just not that black and white all the time, right? I won a state championship as a basketball coach last year. Not everything is always black and white. You have to be able to trust your players and trust what you've seen from them, even if they have a bad game, right? And that they will bounce back. And you know what? If they show you consistently bad games and that's who they are, okay, that's a different conversation. But I feel like so many fans are just jumping in like, nope, he's done. I've seen enough. Let's get Hawks some snaps. And I'm like, you want to give a true freshman some burn like immediately right now? Like that's not what we should hope happens. Yeah. We should hope that Jackson can get it together. And this narrative that he had a bad game against Temple, to me, is insane. I've been talking to people about that. I'm like, he had a bad game. He threw 4 touchdowns.
He threw 4 touchdowns. And
only because our defense had 6 turnovers. I'm like, you mean we played complimentary football? And you want to be mad about playing complimentary football now? Like that? That's what it almost felt like people were saying. Well, if the turnovers didn't happen, then it doesn't matter. Well, you still got to pay it off. I mean, we saw RSJ intercept the pass, and nothing came of it. 3 and out, missed field goal. So you still have to pay it off. It's not just a guarantee, right? There were many good throws in that game. The one to Jalil before he got hurt, that Jackson's getting smashed in the pocket, deep over route hits him in stride. The one to Dion, right? The 2 to Dion really, but the one initially gets hits him over the middle, and then the fade throw, perfectly placed. You got people saying, "Oh man, like the way he was throwing the ball, like he's whatever." Now, because he had one bad game, now everybody will say, well, it was a bad game because he didn't throw for over 200 yards.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to look at the yardage. Going back to Temple, I think it's easy to look at the yardage and not realize you started on the other side of the 50. You had less than half of a field to work with most of the time, and then on top of that, you're bringing up a bunch of passes too, and even that he connected beautifully on. And some really well thought out passes. And I think even going back to this past week, there was one I think where he hit Brennan Thompson out kind of deeper, kind of a deep slant, beautiful placed ball there too. And then there was several of them where I thought very fast decisions on an RPO play that were beautifully done and perfectly placed. There was one to Dion out on the left side that I can think of off the top of my head. Perfect plays, perfect timing, and that happened several times. And so I think people forget that there were 60% of those, which is more than half, that were pretty good throws, and they were good. And there was even several others that were good throws, like the one to I think Bauer Sharp that ended up dropping a first down on 3rd down. So there's a lot that I think people just kind of overreacting on. and not really paying attention to what good there is, and not just with Jackson Arnold. I think with the whole team, and I think you brought up, I think, Taylor Tatum. I 100% agree. Got to feed him the ball more. The one that disappointed me was where were the touches for Gavin Sawchuk? I think he touched it 2 times, 4 times, something like that this last game. So that's supposed to be our number one back, and we didn't really give him the ball, and you didn't let him. He didn't get much when he was running, but you didn't really let him get in any kind of rhythm, and really that stands for any of the running backs. Not really letting them get into a rhythm. I think that's one key piece, and of course the offensive line has to block for him. But you also have to kind of give that ball over to the running back and let them get some rhythm going.
Well, and I think to that point, and I have a counterpoint not a counterpoint, going along with what you said for the Jackson Arnold conversation, then we'll table it. But really quick, on the running back piece, I agree with you. I think that it's also, though hard when you have negative running plays or you get 1 yard and then you end up in these second and long, third and long situations. And so then it makes it harder to just say we're going to hit, which I know is a piece of one, why we probably ran the ball less and had, theoretically, less running plays, is because you're in third and long, you're in second and long. And I get we weren't ever losing. So you could say, hey, there's still opportunity to run it even 3 times if you have to. But I think that's probably not what the fans probably even want to see, if they're going to be honest, right?
Yeah.
Running it on second and long or third and long. What are you doing? Why are we not throwing it down the field? Why are we not throwing it at the stick? I already hear it now. So I think that's a piece of it. But I do agree with you. We have to be able to get into a rhythm. But a lot of that is, are we having early down success in order to do that? I think is another piece. The last thing I'm going to say about Jackson, I think, man, the real reason that people are upset as they are, is because there were how many fans did you hear talk about Dylan Gabriel in just a slanderous way at times last year, because they felt like he couldn't hit the deep ball and he's not going to elevate us and he's not going to. And so put Jackson in last year. See what Jackson can do. I promise you next year Jackson's going to hit that throw. And so now when Jackson's not looking like near the deep ball passer that even DG was at this very moment consistently, people are freaking out. This is what we thought we had. This is what we were told. And so now it's a mess. And I challenge people. I said, hey, keep it a buck. Like, this is what y'all wanted.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to believe in Jackson. I still believe that he can figure it out. But a lot of y'all are the same ones that were calling for DG's name last year. You were calling for his head last year. And now you got your golden boy in here and you ready to turn on him after 2 games. After 2 games. Make it make sense. Okay, I'm done. I'm done with it.
No, absolutely. I'm right there with you, man. It's been frustrating to see all the Jackson Arnold hate and calling for a backup QB. I think that's just the easy way out for fans. It's easy to blame one single guy, but that's the amazing thing about football. It's an 11-man sport, where 11 men on each side of the ball. So if there's one man not doing his assignment, it's going to screw things up. If you have a wide receiver not make his route, it's going to hurt the quarterback, because that was his read. That was the guy he was relying on. But kind of going on, Brent Venables in the press conference, and even Seth Luttrell in the press conference, and then you brought up Jackson Arnold's press conference. Danny Stutzman even upset with himself, and the dude was an animal all game and doing everything he could to keep that defense alive. It seemed like a very even message across the board, and you keep on saying it. Consistency. I heard that from Brent Venables. I heard it a lot from Seth Luttrell, and I think that frustration is going down the line. And it seems like Brent Venables, has relayed that message to everyone, and he relayed it to them pretty quick to where they were ready for it in the press conferences. What do you think they focus on specifically in that consistency? Obviously, I know that's kind of very vague, but what do you think specifically they kind of focus on going into this game against Tulane?
I think they got to figure out, especially explicitly offensively, they have to figure out ways to get Jackson comfortable early. And again, a lot of that has to hinge on the running game. And I know we're banged up on the offensive line, but even if you go, 12, 13 personnel, 2, 3 tight ends on the field, and just commit early to, we're going to establish the run here. Like, we're going to go power. I know Gabe talks about it all the time. He hates the inside split zone that we run a lot. He'd rather than do outside zone. So even if you're going to talk about that, you're going to talk about being in pistol. You're going to talk about having split backs. An elite blocker, like whatever you can to commit more guys to the running game early. That's going to set up the pass later, and even off of passes that get set up, easy rollout passes for Jackson to have. And not to go back to last week necessarily, but like even those at times last week, that's why I said it felt like it was just pieces of bad luck. Like you had design plays for kind of easy, tight ends going underneath the rolling offensive line as they're going left to try to get some eye candy. The defense should be right there, should give you at least 5-6 yards. There's one to Bauer Sharp where if Jackson's able to layer it over him or pump fake and get it to him, Bauer probably goes for 20 plus yards, right? But he gets batted down. Like stuff like that, it can't happen. We just have to figure out ways to get Jackson easy throws that he knows he can complete, that will get us more than 3-4 yards at a time, 6-7, make second down easier, make third down easier than by proxy. So that's what I think, they need to focus on and just find what they're going to be good at and what people know how to do. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, even listening to Gabe and Teddy speak, that, Gabe often talks about with the offensive line, and we're doing musical chairs on the offensive line right now. You have to have guys that know what they're doing. If they don't, you have busts. When you have busts, you get blown up plays, and then you're at 2nd and 15 rather than 2nd and 5 or 2nd even and 6. And so having guys know what they're going to be doing, who they're going to be working to, the communication has to be good. I don't care if you even have to throw out RPOs, not altogether, but I know it's a big part of our offense. But even you have to throw it out for the scripted plays, like script other things and then work some RPOs after that. Sprinkle them in there because I know that's probably what a lot of them are comfortable with. But a lot of times you don't have drive because you're in an RPO. You don't know what decisions are going to be made, and maybe you don't know which way it's going. The terminology, all those things, it just has to get better. And I know it's frustrating because there's been musical chairs, and when you have guys playing different positions, they may not know. They may have not really done all that much the entire summer and fall camp in that position. But hey, this week you got to play it. You got to learn it as quick as you can. And then here we are, and we're like, why the heck can't we run the ball? Why the heck are there busts in pass coverage or even just in general run blocking that we're not able to have any sort of consistency with the offense? And hopefully the guys just have a want to. Yeah. Like that's what you got. That's what you hope, is that the guys have a want to represent the University of Oklahoma to the best of their ability. And I believe that they do. I don't have any reason to believe that they don't. I know Seth does. Yeah. You could tell it in his press conference. He's hot. He's trying to be professional, but he's hot. Yeah. And he's not hot because he's worried about himself. He has played football for the University of Oklahoma. Yeah. Right? When we were at our best, really. Right? Yeah. Mid-2000s. Like he knows what the standard is. Right? He's not just gonna like, oh well, this could have. He's gonna want to work at it, and hopefully the guys follow him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally agree with a lot of what you just brought up too. And with the RPO, the thing is, I think I've seen people kind of screaming to rip out the RPO completely, and I don't know if they realize a lot of the really good decisions that were made by Jackson, I think, were in that RPO. Like I mentioned a moment ago, just finding the quick, wide receiver screen when it's supposed to be there. There's been a couple of times where it doesn't, and what you brought up was actually a really good point. Maybe taking that out of a lot of those scripts, because it is hard to hurry up and get to the line, but then also kind of making those reads real quick after snapping too. So definitely some good thoughts to kind of going forward to Tulane, and hopefully just focusing on Tulane, not trying to jump ahead. Us as Sooner fans are going to jump ahead to Tennessee, right? So just let's let the team focus on Tulane. And ultimately, I think the biggest thing is just put full support in the guys that are on the field, not calling for any other names. I think Spencer Rattler and what we did chasing him out was a bad move, a terrible way to do it. If he could have stuck around, who knows? Maybe things could have worked out just fine for him. I think, things like that just kind of frustrate me. It kind of gets my blood boiling, and I think Sooner fans are better than that. But JP, I appreciate you so much for coming on. Let my listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Indy_Sooner. Again, that's at Indy_Sooner on Twitter. And then, you guys can find me at JP and Trav Show. That's on YouTube. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do a live show every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. You can also follow the JP and Trav Show at JP and Trav Show. My co-host is Travis Davidson. You can follow him at Travis Skull as well. So, yeah, man, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time. And, yeah, hopefully, things get back to, I don't want to say normal, but just we look better. Because there's not a lot of more negative, I think, that could potentially happen unless we just score 0 points against Tulane. So you have to hope that people step up, that Jackson calms his nerves down, they get him some easy throws early, and then he just allows his playmaking ability to take over, because that's what he did in high school. That's why he was a number one quarterback. He's not a Spencer Rattler that, and when I say that, he's more mobile than Spencer ever was, right? And so he can get out of those situations. He can use his feet to make plays in the passing game, and hopefully he gets out of the, timing and just, hey, I got to go make a play now, and that it opens it up for him.
Yeah, absolutely. But JP, again, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yep, thank you.
Hey, Sooner fans, did you enjoy this video? Well, go ahead and hit that like button and go ahead and hit that subscribe button. What are you doing if you've made it this far and haven't already? You should be able to find that subscribe button over here. And then if you want to see full episodes, we've got those up here and clips right down here. So go check that out. But we thank you all so much for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.